Good Friday afternoon, everybody. Hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to my studio. I'm Mark Dyer. Another exciting installment of Friday Live in the Studio with Crazy Artists. So today I want to talk to you about woodblock printmaking. I've been kind of teasing you guys with this image that I've been working on to start doing a print with. So we're going to talk about that. So one of the reasons why we do printmaking like this is it allows us to be able, as artists, to be able to sell our work less expensive than, let's say, one of my paintings. It also, more often than not, the formats are smaller, except for the case of Picasso, who did an old man, and it was 3 foot wide and 6 foot long. So printmaking is not always a small medium, but for the sake of what I'm doing, it's going to be now. So, excuse me just a minute. So what this does is it allows me to pull original prints in small limited editions. They're all hand struck by me, all carved by me. All the whole process is mine. I'm not taking a picture of my work and taking it to a print shop and having them run it through their presses and making 100,000 prints of my work and calling it a limited edition. These are actually true limited editions. My editions usually run 15, 25, 30, depending on the image and the interest that I have in it. I usually cap at 30 because usually what happens is I get bored with pulling the prints. I want to work on something new, so at 30 that's kind of my max. So that's why I do printmaking. It allows people to purchase some of my work at a less expensive price. So let's get into this and start talking safety of what we're doing. So the first thing is to get a Kevlar glove. And these things will save you a lot of anguish. Available at most hardware stores, box stores. Relatively inexpensive, but they will save you a lot of grief. We're going to be working with a lot of sharp tools as we do printmaking, and so it's a good idea to have one of those. You'll thank me later. So always, the reason why we wear that is because we always want sharp tools. One of the tools you're going to want is an X-Acto knife and a good supply of fresh X-Acto blades. You always want your blades to be sharp because you're going to outline your projects with these, and you want to make sure that you get a nice crisp edge. And if you start dragging with a dulled blade, it's going to chip and crack your wood. So that's the reason why I keep these around. The refill pack, relatively inexpensive, has a little slot here to dispense of the old blades, so you're not just throwing them in the trash and poking yourself or the garbage man with them. So I like these. I have a lot of these available simply because I used to teach classes, and so I have a lot of supplies from when I was doing that. So that's kind of a good idea to keep those on hand. So then you're going to want a good set of tools. One of the more expensive sets is the Flex Cut tools. Really nice tools to work with. They come in these are the smaller size, and I think they have a larger size. I like these for kind of the more intricate little detailed work that I do. Really nice. They glide really easy. They fit in my hand. I have pretty big hands and long fingers, so I like these because I have really good control without doing myself in. Really comfortable. Top of the line, more expensive, but that's all right. You don't have to have those because the other ones are just as good. I actually dumped the set that I want. So here's a smaller set. These are readily available at Dick Flicks or any art supplies, Jerry's Artorama. I don't want to show favoritism to anybody. So here's another little set. Same thing. They do come in a wide variety of sizes, so that's the smaller set. I dropped these before, forgot to pick them up. So here's the larger set, V-gouge, U-gouge, a little knife, a little clearing tool. So these are all really good. Again, I like the way they fit in your hand. You can really control them. So it takes some getting used to it, but they're relatively expensive, good to use. Easy to sharpen once you get used to sharpening, and that's something we'll get into as I start doing demonstrations on how to keep your tools good and sharp, because man, if you keep your tools sharp, they will last you a lifetime and they will save you a lot of grief in the long run. I used to do a lot of cussing because I wouldn't want to take the time to sharpen my tools, and I would break something out of a design or out of a print, and so I learned long ago, keep your tools sharp and you won't have to go through all that. So that's kind of that. Speedball makes a little handle like this. This is kind of more for the linoleum, but they do work for the woodblocks. And so what they do is they have a little handle that comes, and then this one doesn't have them all in it. This has 3 or 4 different tips that go in, and they just they're kind of like the X-Acto knives. This turns open and you slide your tip in, and V-gouge or U-gouge, same thing, clearing tool, little knife. Extra sharp, be very careful with these things, they can do you in. So that's kind of the tools you're going to be using. To roll out your inks, you're going to be using brayers. These brayers vary, but if you take care of them, they'll last your lifetime. Vary in cost and shapes and sizes. Speedball makes some really nice, inexpensive ones. These were a few bucks. They're really good. But if you're going to be serious about it, then you'll advance and start getting some better brayers. I actually have some more expensive brayers packed away for safekeeping some places I can't find. So, so those are going to be what you're going to be using to roll your inks out with. So that's kind of your tool section. To pull a print, you're going to use a burin. This is a Japanese burin, and this has a bamboo sheave on it. Then they pull it around, and the bamboo actually makes the handle on the back. There's a little disc inside. And so what you do is you ink up your block, put your paper on, and then you rub this around on it. And then what I like to do when I'm done with that is take a tablespoon and I'll rub gently around my edges just to make sure I get nice crisp edges, if that's what I'm doing with the print. So they have these, really inexpensive, little package. Like I said, I had a lot of this available because I used to teach classes, and so I like to teach people how to not only pull them by hand, and then we would work on the presses, and that's something I'll be demonstrating as I go. So that's kind of those. I make a bench hook that will hold my blocks. I have to kind of shift stuff around here. So these are easy to make. Again, this was made with just a piece of scrap lumber that I have in the back. And then so it was made with a piece of 1x12. I got fancy and painted it because I wanted it to look nice for presentation today. So you can see right here I've got little notches in it. So that's just made out of 1x2 material. This is the stuff that I make the cradles out of, and I always have little scrap pieces of this. So I just cut a 45, cut them to length, and then screw them onto the scrap piece of lumber on the side of it with some drywall screws and a little glue. Don't get too fancy. These are utilitarian. Like I said, I just painted this one because the piece of scrap lumber that I had was really nasty looking, and so I made this. But what it does is it allows you to hook this onto your bench or your countertop or your tabletop, whatever you're using. And then what it does is it allows you to manipulate your block as you work and keep it secure at any angle. So as you're working, it doesn't slide away from you or slide across the surface of the countertop. The other thing you can use is those anti-slip pads, and I've used those. They work all right, but what I like about this is that I can quickly maneuver this, and so that's one of the things you have to watch when you build this, is you don't get that one by proud, so you have a little lip so it catches as you spin the block around. I like to be, I don't like to have to fuss with things a lot, so that's why I like that. It just spins easily, and I can continue focusing on my work. So again, just scrap piece of lumber. So back in the olden days, what we would do is we would find the scrap piece of lumber. This was before engineered lumber, and this is what we would carve on. We would carve on a piece of 1x12, 1x6, 1x8, whatever we found. or bought. But a lot of times what you do is you have these knots, and so you learn to incorporate those knots in your design. You can kind of sand them down so they don't show up very much, but I'm an old school purist, so I kind of like some of that unfinished, hand-struck, non-mechanical looking stuff. So what I would do is I would take a wire brush and I would brush the grain to get that grain to pop up so I could incorporate that into a design. And so when we get into multiple blocks, you start using a lot of that stuff to accent your compositions in what you're doing. So you can, you know, drive down the street and people are throwing away scrap lumber, find a piece of one by something and use it to make a block. And so a lot of people used to, you know, take apart skids. That's all right, but sometimes the skids are pretty rough, so I don't recommend that. But again, even if you went and bought a piece of this at the store, it's relatively inexpensive. So that's kind of that. I happen to, you know, I have a lot of recycled stuff back here. So then this is actually a piece of manufactured, back in the old days we didn't have the manufactured lumber like we do now. So this is actually a piece of manufactured plywood. It's a birch plywood, has a really nice birch. Birch is pretty hard, but it's also really easy to carve, has a nice tooth to it. And so what I do is I use this. Now this comes in a 4x8 sheet, but you can also, at the major lumber yards, they have, over in the section by the dimensional lumber, they have where they've cut up pieces of this that's been damaged, and they cut them into smaller sizes. So this is readily available in smaller sizes if you don't want to purchase a whole 4x8 sheet, which is understandable for me economically. For what I do, it's more feasible for me to get a 4x8 sheet than it is to buy smaller pieces. So that's why, but I use this engineered lumber now mainly. Simply because it's a little bit dreamier to work with. I don't get quite as frustrated. With the pine, you can get tear outs and rip outs, and that's, you know, when we're talking about having sharp tools, that's one of the reasons. So it all depends on what you want to do. But you can also get this, and I don't know where my small piece went. This is just linoleum, like the linoleum you have on your floor, a little different. It's a little bit softer. I keep this in my studio, and I've used it a few times. I like it. It's fine. Like I said, I'm an old school purist. But I keep this around for students when I was teaching. So this is probably 10 years old, 12 years old. I had it in a box stored away for all those years. It's still flexible, it's still viable, it's still usable. You can cut it really easy. The shapes come, you know, you can get it in a wide variety of sizes. It's available. Jerry's Autorama at Dick Blick. I happen to go with Dick Blick quite a bit simply because before the others art stores around, Dick Blick was kind of the one that we go to in college, and that was before the internet, and so you ordered everything out of the catalog. So I'm kind of telling on myself. But this you can pull a print off of just laying it on here, and I have a little jig that I put down, and so you can pull it without even mounting it. You can mount it to a block of wood, whether it's the engineered like this or the piece of pine that I was just showing you. So you can mount it. I use rubber cement, just do a layer on the piece, a layer on the board, and then stick it together. You can do that so that if you're going to print in the press, it's type high, so it brings it up off the floor of the press bed, so it brings it up higher. Or you can or you can still pull it by hand with this. Just your jig has to be a little bit taller for your paper to write on. So there's a number of ways you can do it. Like I said, I use rubber cement. You can, if you don't want to save the board that you're mounting it to, you can use carpet adhesive. I try to be really careful in the studio with the fumes and stuff. And I've always been kind of cautious about those things, but even more so now that my studio is attached right to the house, and the smells and the vapors all go into my living area. So that's kind of the linoleum, really good. The speedball handles, that's really kind of what these are for the linoleum. I'll say that 3 times fast. So that's kind of where I'm at with those. I like it, and so I'll be doing a demonstration so you can see the difference in those things as we go through. Everything has its pros and cons. So then when you're rolling out your inks, a lot of people use glass. I will caution you, if you use a sheet of glass to roll your ink out on, to make sure that it's laying absolutely tight to your surface, your work surface, your countertop, your tabletop, whatever you're working on, because if that glass is raised up, or if you have a warp in your countertop, a little bit as you roll your brayer across it, you have the tendency to push down, and that glass can crack and really cause a lot of grief. You can use a piece of glass. A lot of people use that. I have my own personal choices for my own personal reasons. That's one of the reasons why I don't like the glasses. It's a little more fussy. Being able to store it is kind of painful, because you have to worry about something bumping it and breaking it, or moving it around and getting scratched with the glass. And so all those things I take into consideration. Other people use plexiglass. Plexiglass is really good unless it has a scratch. If it gets a scratch in it, then it's not viable anymore, because that little scratch will then pick up on that brayer as you roll your brayer across your ink, and then that'll transfer into your print, and it'll cause you some grief there. So plexiglass is another good way to do it, but just you have to be really careful and really mindful of what you're doing. So I'm old school. Back when I went to school, we had a big counter that was all marble, actually granite, and so that's kind of what I do. Years ago, somebody gave me this piece of marble, and so this is my ink marble. I keep it in my studio. It's easy to store. I don't have to worry about it quite as much as glass about getting broke. If I do leave it set out, I can set stuff on it and not have to worry about, again, breaking the glass or anything like that. I have this big piece of marble. You can also go to the places where they make stone countertops. A lot of times they'll sell you a sink cutout where they've manufactured a countertop and they've cut the sink out. Those are usually 3 foot wide by about 18 inches. Another really good thing. Just make sure that if you get something like that, it's a whiter colored. You don't want the darker colors, because then you won't be able to see your ink quite as well in your colors. So we are going to be mixing colors and doing different things. We're not going to do just simple black and white. So the other thing you can do, you can go to any of your stores that sell tile, and just a little square tile of marble, 3/8 inch thick or 1/2 inch thick. Perfect for that. I do use this on occasion when I have just little spots. So one of the techniques I'm going to show you is a jigsaw print, where you cut little blocks out of your print and you color them up different. And so this would be really good for that. So I'm not putting out a lot of ink and making a big mess. I can use a couple of these tiles and roll out some really small little batches of inks with a smaller brayer, and I can ink up those little pieces, those little jigsaws. So that's kind of what I do with those. But again, it's kind of personal taste. I'm here to only suggest this is how I do it. I by no means call myself an authority. So always in the past I've used oil-based inks. This is Graphics Chemicals. Again, it's a place that I've used since I started printmaking. They have a wide variety of inks available. These are oil-based. They do have the brayers available. Everything is available mostly at any art supply. Graphic Chemicals I use because these are oil-based inks, and these are kind of old school style inks. What I don't like about these is the cleanup. You have to use a lot of mineral spirits and turpentine and stuff like that. So it gets really smelly, so I always try to be mindful of those fumes that I'm giving off. So in the past I've tried a couple different water-based inks, and what I found with them was they would get really gummy as you start working your way through the addition. And so I kind of gave up on those and went back to my oil-based. And so my friend Amy, she works for Jerry's Artorama. If you get a chance, check her out. I will post a link. She does a Tuesday video, live video, usually an hour and a half, 2 hours. Amy is very knowledgeable about art supplies, about techniques. She has a lot of her stuff, a lot of those videos are posted on YouTube. If you have any questions, look her up. Like I said, I'll post the video to those things, or the links to those videos as I get going in this. So Amy and I have talked. Amy and I went to school, dear friend, fabulous artist. We talked a little bit about Speedball now has something called professional relief inks. These are water-based, so I bought a sample set, and we're going to be trying those. We're going to try them together. So we'll be working with those and see how those do. If Amy's recommended, I have full faith that they're going to be comparable to my oil-based, simply because she and I are kind of old, our birds of a feather, we're both old school and kind of purist about some things, and I think both printmaking, that's one of the things that we're very compatible in. So we're going to be trying these inks together, see how those work. But again, if they don't necessarily work for me, it doesn't mean they won't work for you. So I would suggest that you give these a try too, simply because if you're just doing printmaking for your own enjoyment, or on a smaller scale, and you don't have a lot of space, you don't have a big studio like mine is not big enough for me yet. But if you're working in a small studio, the less fumes you have, the better. And so I'm always looking for a better way to be safe about things. So anyway, that's it. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, take care of yourselves, and we'll talk to you again. Thank you all.